Let's do this. So if you're new to this, the rules are we try to keep the same cast and largely a lot of the same sets, some of the general ideas. How can we make it all work with what we're given? Start of the episode, mostly okay. The little Maquis ship gets dragged into the Delta Quadrant. Tom Paris is brought to DS9 where he witnesses Voyager for the first time. And while he's there, they place him in the brig for holding. After a little while, Janeway arrives and has a discussion with him. She needs his help to locate the Maquis that he once served with. He asks why, but she's not very forthcoming. Just says, help me, I will see about what I can do with your jail time. He thinks about it a little bit and then agrees. Still get the scene in the bar with Harry, Kim, and Quark. The ship begins to prepare for departure. We then see Janeway is talking to Cavett, who turns out is actually the captain of Voyager, and Janeway has been his first officer for about 2-3 years, and she's going to be promoted and will be taking over her own vessel soon. But she wants Tuvok to be her first officer on her new ship, so he's going to help rescue Tuvok from the Maquis as kind of one last mission, and then Janeway will get to go off and start her career as captain. With Tom Paris, Voyager flies into the Badlands, searches around, and then the wave from the caretaker comes in and teleports it to the Delta Quadrant. After being teleported to the Delta Quadrant, the ship is wrecked. People are lying all around. Janeway finds Captain and realizes he's dead. She has just a moment's hesitation as the weight of everything kind of hits her, and then she resolves to step up. She takes command, gets everyone moving, gets everyone trying to recover, goes down to engineering, stops a warp core breach. Tom Paris and Harry Kim go down to sickbay, where they find out the doctor is actually still alive, but a lot of his staff isn't, and so he has to activate the EMH in order to assist him with the influx of patients, and the two doctors work to help everybody out. And then shortly after that, everyone on board is teleported away, except for the EMH, who's just stuck there as he was before. They then find themselves on board the caretaker's array. Instead of a redneck party, we have a bit of awkward humor where the caretaker, after reading their computer, simulates everybody from Earth. We have Romans in ancient costumes, and Scotsmen in kilts, and hillbilly rednecks, maybe Japanese samurai, tribesmen of every continent. If there's a cheap costume nearby and stereotype, we throw it in just because caretaker, is a distant alien who doesn't really get all the nuances of humanity. They have their little bit where eventually they find the medical bay where the caretaker has the crew of the Maquis. If you've seen the episode, you know how it goes. They're whisked in there and medical experiments are performed on the crew. A day later, everyone's returned to their ship. The Maquis find themselves in a bit of a pickle. Their ship's environmental systems were damaged in the transport. Chakotay contacts Janeway and she knows she has him a bit over a barrel. She agrees to let them come aboard and she'll help out with his ship some if he comes help out with hers. They go, over to Voyager. Tuvok makes his reveal that he's really with them. There's a bit of anger and some drama. They all realize that they are in a strange place with really messed up ships, so they need to work together for right now. They need to try and repair everything, but they don't really have the parts on hand. Sensors detect that nearby in space is a just kind of cloud of scrap metal and debris, so everyone figures they can go over there and try to get parts. With the Maquis ship in tow, Voyager flies over to the scrapyard and decides to start looking for things to possibly repair. Janeway asks Kim for a status report on the ship, while Chakotay asks Taurus for ideas on what they need, and that's when both of them realize that their crewmen are missing. Shortly after this revelation, there is an alert as a new ship comes into range and locks on weapons. Things are a bit tense. They get a call, and it's Neelix. He's in charge of the ship. He warns Voyager that he is in charge of the scrapyard, and they need to lay off his stuff. Janeway, not intimidated, gives a threatening counter proposal, and then Tuvok pipes up. She cuts off the feed silent, asking him what's going on, and Tuvok replies that they only have one working phaser bank at like half power, but they can maybe get 3 torpedoes to fire. Janeway considers this a moment that's not exactly her best position, but tells Tuvok to fire 1 torpedo at Neelix, half yield, so he does so. Voyager shoots at the ship, it shakes Neelix up, and then Janeway offers a counter proposal. Work together, and they can trade, or she can blow him up and then take what she wants anyway. Neelix hesitates a minute, then decides to not try and call Janeway's bluff and agrees. So we get a scene where all 3 ships are working together. Tuvok gives Janeway a report. They have impulse power, very limited warp, still very low weapons and shield. Nearly half the crew is dead or gone. Tuvok explains they can replicate some of the smaller parts, but larger things that they need for repairs will require an industrial strength replicator, which they just don't have on board. They may be able to convert one of the holodecks into one of those, but it's going to take several days. Chakotay reports that his ship needs fewer repairs to get back online, and that maybe that should be their priority, and then they can fix Voyager. Janeway again weighs everything and then distributes orders. Neelix will go with most everybody else. We'll get at least environmental systems on the Maquis ship up and running. Biggest priority is Voyager. Janeway then reveals that she, Tuvok, and the Doctor are going to go back to the Array to investigate what's going on and what happened to him during the missing day. And Chakotay insists that he's going to tag along so that Maquis don't get left out of everything. So they get the environmental systems on Maquis ship back up and then fly it. So they reach the Array. They get on board. Janeway orders Tuvok to investigate it and figure out some way to get them back home, while she and Doctor and Chakotay wander around until they find the caretaker. The caretaker is magnanimous and even respects them a little bit for their grit. Explains that he is sorry about the experimentation, but he needed to see if he could find somebody compatible that he could make an offspring or clone with. They ask why, and he reveals that his people were explorers, but one day they came to this region of space, and because of their efforts, they accidentally messed up two species, the Ocampa and the Kazon, to the point that now both of these species have really shortened lives. So the caretaker and his mate stayed behind to try and take care of them, which they did for many centuries. Unfortunately, both species ended up becoming caricatures of the offspring of overbearing parents. One species became extremely sheltered and wouldn't really do anything, while the other species became extremely resentful and pushed out. They became aggressive and combative, constantly splintering, pushing out in the galaxy. The caretaker has mostly kept these two from fighting, but it's been strained ever since, and he will be dying soon. And he's nervous that when he does, these two species will finally conflict. At least one will be wiped out, if not both. During this, Tuvok interrupts that he has found the missing crew member. They are down with the Ocampa. Janeway assures the caretaker that they'll try what they can, and then she leaves Tuvok there while the rest of them beam down to confront the Ocampa people, where they find Taurus and Ensign Kemp. The Doctor gets busy trying to heal their people. Because they arrived from the caretaker, the Ocampa are kind of in awe. Chakotay, using his skills in anthropology, kind of convinces Janeway to play up the role as kind of a prophet to these people. And she's not so sure about it, but he points out that this situation is so far beyond the Prime Directive, they need to do what they can to help out these people. Janeway thinks about it a minute and then says, yeah, I am totally a messenger from the caretaker. He is about to die. Y'all need to get your stuff together and be ready to live on your own. And at that moment, the caverns shake, and they look outside, and the Kazon are attacking the underground base. And Janeway says, first step of your new lives is to learn to kick ass. She puts Chakotay into training the Ocampa on how to fight, while she goes and communicates with the Kazon. And they have a little bit back and forth. She plays up prophet of the caretaker role, which maybe backfires just a hair because they really don't like the caretaker still. At one point during the negotiation, Janeway attempts to convince them to stop fighting because the caretaker is dying. This catches the Kazon's interest, and they actually redouble their efforts and sends off a signal. You get some excitement where, with Chakotay's leadership, the Ocampa fight back against the Kazon. Some people die. The Doctor himself, he gets shot and dies. But eventually they manage to repel the attackers, and the Kazon back off. So Janeway and Chakotay give the Ocampa some lessons. He maybe teaches them war. She gives them some hints and instructions on science. They get Taurus and Kim and resolve to leave, but of course they can't quite get out. So Kes volunteers to be their guide. They all go up through the tunnels to the surface, and then Kes demands to come along, and they all go back to Voyager. From there, they find that Voyager is slightly more repaired, so they go over to the caretaker's array, connect with the Maquis ship, tractor beam it. Tuvok says that he has finished his study and is ready to talk to Janeway, so she and Chakotay beam over. Tuvok explains to them he can use the array to send them back, but it will be the same kind of ride that they had getting here. An ordeal, he mentions, that nearly destroyed the ship and killed nearly half the crew, and that was with the ship repaired. Chakotay considers it a moment and says he's willing to risk it if he has to. Janeway thinks and thinks And while she's doing that, sensors come off, Kazon vessels incoming, probably a whole fleet. While Voyager could maybe handle it on her best day, this is very clearly not her best day. Tuvok reveals that the caretaker has died and asks Tuvok to blow up the station, and they can do that with like a delayed charge, but they can't let it fall into the hands of the Kazon. So they're on a running clock. Janeway thinks about it and then tells Tuvok to gather all the data he can, all the parts he can, and then be prepared to blow up the station. Chakotay protests a bit. Janeway explains that it's just not worth the risk to try and get home right now, but they'll try and find another way later. So they go back, and Voyager blows up the array. And so with that, Voyager and the Maquis ship limp away slowly. The Kazon ships close in on the remains of the caretaker and see what has happened. Now, if you watch the regular show, you know the episode ends with Janeway on the bridge giving a speech to the crew. Instead, it should end with Janeway sits alone in her ready room. It's dark, maybe there's some flickering lights and debris around the place to represent that of all the repairs on the ship, they still haven't gotten to fixing her room. So she's sitting there reviewing the day's events when Chakotay comes into the room, and they have a conversation like, "So, are we still under arrest?" She replies, "Officially, yes, but it seems kind of academic now. Well, we have a long way ahead of us. Even at maximum warp, it would take your ship 75 years to get home. And right now, you can't even manage that." Janeway replies, "We'll fix it. And we'll find a way. Could be a lot of danger out there. So what are you going to do now?" "Probably go get some sleep. It has been a long day." "Yeah, but we survived." And then you can close out the show. In the second episode, well, technically episode 3 since the first one was a two-parter, Voyager gets stuck in a black hole, and a lot of the episode is pretty much a committee meeting between Janeway and Chakotay over who should be the chief engineer, Carrie or B'Elanna. That's boring. So how about instead, with our new setup, we can have Voyager putting along, so they're still working on repairs. The little Maquis ship's keeping pace with it. When Voyager gets caught in the gravity well of a black hole, but isn't yet behind the event horizon. Of course, with a black hole, you know, not even light can escape, but starships have warp capability, which means they can move faster than light. Normally a black hole wouldn't be that much of a problem, but Voyager's warp drive is still kind of on the fritz. Maybe they try to go to warp with a half-built drive and messes up, blows some gaskets. Lots of tension. Meanwhile, the Maquis ship perhaps engaged its warp drive, got away, and now on board here, Chakotay has a moral dilemma about whether he should take his people like B'Elanna and some of the others and just keep going and go find their ways, or you know, he feels kinda wrong letting them die. So eventually, after some tension and some back and forth, they decide to do the right thing and come to the ship and dock with it. And B'Elanna brings over the component from the Maquis warp drive to Voyager's. The guy that would be the chief engineer's like, "I tried putting that part in, but it was not regulation. Nothing about it was in the manual. I had no idea what to do." And B'Elanna's like, "Yeah, I've been sort of ad-hocking warp drives for a while now. I can pretty much build one out of 2 sticks and chewing gum." And gets it repaired. Warp drive's back online for Voyager, goes into warp, and escapes the black hole. And then afterwards, so Janeway's like, "Well, I guess we should probably keep you and maybe put you in charge of engineering so you can keep fixing us when breaks." And B'Elanna's like, "Well, okay, the engines on the Maquis ship are now busted, so I may as well stay here." And then through the season, you can have that where more parts from the Maquis ship are moved over to Voyager, and then it perhaps even more crew. And Chakotay, you know, slowly becomes the captain of a dying ship until eventually the last parts of this are moved over here, and he comes over and becomes the first officer. But you know, you don't have to do that right away. You can get more stories out of this conflict and wait till maybe halfway in the season for Janeway to then stand up, give a speech. Star Trek, you've given us some quality entertainment and some bad entertainment. But for me, nothing will be more disappointing than Voyager. Why? The show offers a unique opportunity where you can have a continuity storyline, yet have stories that are kind of disconnected. For example, you have an episode where somebody's on a shuttlecraft and it crashes. Kaboom, blows up. Next episode, Voyager comes on screen and you hear Captain's log. After losing a shuttle recently, we've stopped at a local Delta Quadrant used car salesman to try and get a replacement. Another episode, they can fire some torpedoes at an enemy and then have to stop by at a local weapons dealer to buy new torpedoes. It's a way to have your cake and eat it too. Those that have watched episode to episode get a sense of continuity and that this is a real ship with things happening on it that actually matter, but those that are new to the show can jump right in and get caught up as long as they're just familiar with the basics. I would also state establish that other than Kate Mulgrew, anybody else on the show is subject to being replaced. And then constantly try and figure out who isn't working out. And of course, you can reuse actors. So, say Neelix isn't really working out as a character, move him off at some episode, and then have Ethan Phillips return as a completely different character who comes aboard and upsets the dynamic in a new way. Just have every season be pushing the crew and changing it, always trying to keep it shuffling to try and get a sense that this crew is really out here alone and they have to make do in less than ideal circumstances. Done that way, I think Voyager could have been one of the greatest Trek series ever. Too bad it wasn't.